You know, it's great to be here in a market that's so buoyant. And the interesting thing about it is, I think all of us have had experiences over the past several years where conversations are more about the downside than the upside. And this is one of the first times we've had continual conversations about the upside. I'm sure you've heard this before, but today, for the first time, more than half of the world's population lives in an urban setting, such as SAO Paulo, versus a rural setting. And that trend is only going to increase over the next few years. Moreover, because this is a concurrent with the rapid industrialization of our society, including investments in infrastructure that you can see in other countries, and I'm sure will come here to Brazil, it does mean economic advancement for the waves of those people that are coming into the urban environment. Therefore, if you think about the burgeoning population of developing country, the demand for our product, and our product being the aluminum can, will increase. And will not only increase here in Brazil, it will increase the rest of the world, and we're seeing that trend pick up. And we see the drivers for these demands intensifying, and we actually think they will continue at an accelerating rate, and it's clear that nobody's been able to forecast demand accurately. We've all missed on the low side in recent months. So Novelis has considered Brazil, as we look at it, as the vanguard of these global trends. Brazil has been through a lot of ups and downs over the last 30 years. And if you think back to it, when Novelis was part of Alcan before we were spun out, we were actually the first to commit to Brazil some 35 years ago when we put our facility up in Pinda. And we were the first to challenge the dominance of steel cans in this country and then lay out over time, with the help of the can makers, an industrial infrastructure that allowed the aluminum can, to be so popular. Included in here was a network of collection systems for recycling, which really now is the marvel for the rest of the world to model itself after. As we've gone forward, the can market in Brazil has grown dramatically. It's had double-digit rate growth over the last 3 years, and if you think about 2010 alone, it grew 27%. This year, in 2011, or next year, it could grow an incremental 15%. And over the long haul, we're projecting about an 8% per annum growth in Brazil of the aluminum can. As I said earlier, I think anybody can forecast these days, but the one thing that's true is we're all forecasting on the downside. So with any luck, that could be 10 or 12%. This is far in excess of the rest of the world, which is really moderating at about 3%. When you think about it, it's generally flat to slightly declining in the US, and it's probably between 4 and 7% rest of the world outside of Western Europe. So the can makers here are investing heavily. And as we look at that, we are also investing heavily. But let's talk about the capacity that the can makers are putting in here to look at the demand that this market's pulling. Capacity is forecast to increase right now from 15 billion tons to 22 billion tons by 2012. That's an annual growth rate of 21%. There's no place else in the world that we're seeing that level of growth that fast for this product line. Our intentions are very clear. We announced earlier this year that we are going to bring our capacity up at our Brazilian facility from about 400 kilotons to 600 kilotons by 2013. And we've even considered beyond that, if the demand continues, we have the ability to go further in terms of capacity expansions. You know, all of this is just simply to keep up with the burgeoning industrial and economic growth that we foresee in Brazil. Brazil is different from the regions of North America and Western Europe. Those are mature markets for can sheet. But in Brazil, the aluminum can is still seen as a relatively new product, and it continues to win market share every month away from PET and glass. And interesting, it's a very cool product for the younger audiences that go out and purchase the beer. Can share in the beer segment alone is going to go from about 36% to over 44% by 2015. And it may even get as high as 50% by the end of this decade. In summary, Brazil, and in Brazil, the can is cool. If we expand or even maintain that cachet, we have to step up the investment to already keep pace with demand. Already more aluminum beverage cans are consumed in Brazil than China. Consider that. And think about it from a perspective from the United States. If Brazil were to consume, on a per capita basis, the number of aluminum cans that are consumed in the United States, just to put them on parity, we would have to add another 1 million tons of can sheet capacity to meet that demand. So the market potential here is very real, the product is cool, and there's other factors in play that make this a very real part of our business going forward. If you think about it on a ratio basis, Brazil's investment to GDP ratio is nearing 20%, which is one of the highest in the world. And that puts more jobs in the market and more money in people's pockets. And more consumption does mean more beverages, and that's very good news for us. Aluminum is winning the rightful recognition as the most sustainable option for single-serving containers. You know, unlike PET, aluminum can may be reformed from old can to new can, and it's much easier to handle than tons of broken glass. Of course, we know that Brazil is also the world leader in beverage can recycling. It has an unbelievable rate of over 90% of the aluminum cans are recycled. And that we're well aware of that attribute, at least this is driven in part by poor families that make a living on retrieving cans from the waste streams located throughout the country. But we've also seen that the recycling rates have actually climbed, even as poverty has declined. And this indicates to us that the recycling business in Brazil is becoming an industry unto itself. In fact, if you look at the population involved in that, there's over 170,000 people involved in can recycling in Brazil, and over 2,000 commercial facilities that benefit financially from recycling. That's an enormous micro-industry and one of a kind in the world's economy. Thinking about the interval that leads to in terms of the beverage can that goes from on the shelf, through consumption, through the recycling, back to the beverage can on the shelf, in the Brazilian market, this is 30 days. In the US market, for example, it's 60 days. So not only does this improve velocity, it reduces the carbon footprint, it employs more people, but it really says that the aluminum can is really a part of the fabric of this country's culture. The success that Brazil has seen in UBC is the envy of the world, and we model it, we look at it. I don't think we fully understand it, but as we try to expand recycling worldwide, we actually step back and look at what's happened in Brazil and try to vision what could happen in other countries. Just in the United States, it's struggling at 57% to get an alignment around how to accelerate that forward. So we're hopeful that the experience we've learned here in Brazil will help us and all of the can makers worldwide learn how to recycle in a more efficient manner as we move forward. And it really does start to position Brazil as a teaching model for other countries, which is a unique position to be in. So at Novelis, we believe it is the right time to invest, and it is the right business, and it is the right location. And nowhere is this justified than what we are doing here. Yesterday, I was at our Pinda facility where we actually signed formally the contracts with our major equipment suppliers to initiate all of the work on our $300 million expansion. This will expand our plant's capacity initially by 50% with the stage set for more. And if you look at the extensive nature of this, it's a new cold mill, it's a new pusher furnace, it's an expansion of the capabilities of our remelt activity, it's streamlining our hot mill capability. In fact, it's transforming the entire plant. This is the single largest capital investment we've made, and we feel it's absolutely secure, and it's one of the highest return projects we could have made. And I'm certain, based on what we've learned here, it will not be our last. Of course, we have to continue to manage our business closely. I mean, the Pinda expansion not only demonstrates our company's commitment to the promise of Brazil, but it also exemplifies a new and wiser business model that all of us, including us at Novelis, are looking at for major capital investments. We've all learned from the issues of 2008. We've all sharpened our pencils, and we have higher internal rates of returns and a clearer focus on where we are going to put our money down. And if you think about the fabric and the culture and the geopolitical stability in Brazil, those previously may not have been considered as seriously as they are now. And I think with the can makers putting their investments down, we're all looking at this as a very stable place to invest, which then draws forward a better return for everybody involved. That is a huge difference in the way we evaluate business propositions than what we did a few years ago. So getting back to the can, someday somebody may invent something as elegantly simple and useful as an aluminum can. I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon, and I think we're safe with our capital investments. If you think about the book actually was introduced 500 years ago. It stayed the test of time and still does today. The can, by comparison, was only introduced 5 decades ago, so we have a long way to go to match the book. And I think we're going to see an outpouring continually of innovative packaging, color schemes, trends, and all of the other elements in society, including sustainability, that will support a long-term viable can business. And at the end of the day, as you think about Brazil, the one thing I do know is that if you were going to the beach this afternoon, you'd be able to bring your paperback novel and your aluminum beverage can. Thank you very much.